The pulse plasma rounds shattered against Thornvale's crystalline walls like dying stars, each impact sending cascades of bioluminescent sparks across Daniel's visor. His combat engineering gear hung in tatters, the exoskeleton's servos grinding as alien bioacids ate through the alloy joints. 3 days of running. 3 days since the ambush that scattered his unit across this nightmare landscape of living architecture and carnivorous flora. The hive fortress rose before him like a fever dream sculpted from obsidian and bone, its spiraling towers pulsing with veins of amber light. Somewhere within those organic corridors, his captured squadmates awaited execution if the intelligence reports proved accurate, if they were still alive. Daniel pressed himself against a ridge of calcified coral, watching the biomechanical sentries patrol the perimeter. Their insectoid forms moved with predatory grace, mandibles clicking in harmonized patterns that translated as communications too alien for human understanding. The infiltration charges in his pack felt heavier with each passing moment, their detonation codes locked behind biometric scanners that required living tissue to activate. He'd come here to extract his people. Now it seemed more likely he'd join them. The hunter forms found him at dawn. They emerged from the coral formations like death given wings, their chitinous carapaces reflecting the binary sunrise in fractal patterns. Daniel's pulse rifle spoke in controlled bursts, the coherent energy beams punching through their natural armor. But for every creature that fell, 2 more materialized from hidden alcoves. When his ammunition ran dry, they swarmed him with calculated precision, their paralyzing venom flooding his system through microinjectors hidden in their grasping talons. Consciousness flickered. The world dissolved into geometric dreams of impossible colors. He awakened in a chamber that defied architectural logic, its walls breathing with organic rhythm, while bioluminescent nodes traced patterns across surfaces that seemed simultaneously solid and liquid. The air carried scents of ozone and exotic pollens, underlaid with something that made his human hindbrain whisper warnings about predators and territorial marking. Daniel tested his restraints, finding himself secured not by metal chains, but by living tendrils that responded to his movements with gentle but implacable resistance. The bioorganic bonds adjusted their grip with unsettling intelligence, maintaining perfect circulation while preventing any possibility of escape. Footsteps approached, but the sound carried wrong harmonics, too many points of contact with the floor, multiple legs moving in synchronized patterns. She entered the chamber with the fluid grace of a creature evolved for both beauty and lethality. Zuravel stood nearly 7 feet tall, her elongated form combining humanoid elegance with distinctly arthropod characteristics. Her skin held the lustrous quality of polished chitin, deep amber shot through with veins of silver that pulsed with her heartbeat. 4 arms moved in unconscious coordination, each hand tipped with delicate but sharp talons. Her face retained enough human analog features to be recognizable as feminine, but her large compound eyes held depths that spoke of intelligence operating on frequencies human minds could barely comprehend. A crown of living crystal grew from her skull, its faceted surface refracting light into impossible spectra. This was no mere soldier or administrator. This was royalty. Daniel's combat training cataloged threats and vulnerabilities with automatic precision. Her lower limbs showed the muscular development of a jumping predator. Her secondary arms could move independently of conscious thought, suggesting parallel processing capabilities. The bioluminescent patterns across her carapace shifted too rapidly for human eyes to track, indicating active communication with systems throughout the fortress. Zuravel studied him with the same clinical interest, her compound eyes fragmenting his image into thousands of simultaneous perspectives. When she spoke, Her voice carried harmonic undertones that resonated in his chest cavity. "Your species fascinates us, engineer." She moved closer, each step placing her feet in perfect silence. "You destroy with such elegant precision, yet you risk everything to preserve the lives of mere clutchmates." The translation matrix in Daniel's head struggled with concepts that had no human equivalent. Clutchmates implied both genetic relationship and military unit, but with emotional overtones suggesting something more intimate than either. "I've come for my people." His voice came out rougher than intended, the paralytic agent still affecting his vocal cords. "Release them, and maybe we can discuss terms." Terms. Zuravel's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Yes, engineer, let us discuss terms." She gestured with one secondary arm, and the chamber's walls began displaying holographic data streams. Medical charts, genetic sequences, population statistics that made Daniel's stomach clench with their implications. "Your species and mine face extinction, engineer. Not from war, though we excel at that. From biology itself." The data painted a picture of coordinated genocide. Human soldiers exposed to hive pheromones were developing progressive sterility, their reproductive systems shutting down after prolonged contact with alien biosignatures. Meanwhile, hive populations were dying from cellular breakdown, their genetic matrices corrupted by exposure to human-engineered bioweapons that attacked the fundamental architecture of their DNA. Mutual annihilation through biological warfare. Someone had designed this outcome with surgical precision. "We know the source," Zuravel continued, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to angry reds and purples. "Rogue elements within your military hierarchy. Scientists who believe extinction preferable to coexistence." Daniel stared at the genetic cascade failures displayed across the chamber walls. The damage was already spreading through both populations. In 5 years, maybe 10, both species would face reproductive collapse. "Why tell me this? Why not execute me with the others?" "Because you are not like the others, engineer." Her compound eyes seemed to focus on some point beyond the visible spectrum. "Our bioanalysts have examined your genetic structure. You carry markers we have not seen before. Adaptability, resistance to our cellular disruptors, the biological flexibility necessary for hybridization." The word hung in the air like a charged particle, crackling with implications that made Daniel's mind reel. "You're suggesting genetic crossbreeding." His voice carried more disbelief than horror, which surprised him. "Between humans and hive forms." "Not suggesting, engineer, declaring." She moved closer, her secondary arms reaching out to touch his face with delicate precision. Her talons traced the line of his jaw with careful gentleness. "I am Zuravel, 13th Queen of the Thornville Collective, and I offer you marriage." The translation matrix provided cultural context in rapid bursts. Hive marriage involved genetic melding, consciousness sharing, and biological transformation that would fundamentally alter both participants. The union would create hybrid offspring, capable of surviving in environments that would kill either parent species. More importantly, their children would be immune to the bioweapons currently devastating both populations. Marriage to an alien queen, to save both their species. "Your military commanders will brand you traitor," Zuravel continued, her voice taking on harmonics of sympathy. "My own hive nobles speak of contamination, of genetic pollution that threatens our purity. But purity leads only to extinction, engineer. Survival requires adaptation." Daniel tested his restraints again, feeling the bioorganic bonds respond by loosening slightly. A gesture of trust, or perhaps preparation for whatever came next. "The others, my captured squadmates, will be released unharmed as part of our marriage contract." Zuravel's bioluminescence shifted to cooler blues and greens. "Your people will return to Ashdale Base with evidence of the conspiracy against both our species." Whether they choose to act on that evidence remains to be seen. Heavy footsteps echoed through the chamber's corridors, accompanied by the distinctive whine of military-grade pulse weapons. Human weapons, they have come for you, as expected. Zuravel moved to the chamber's control center, her 4 arms working in coordination across biomechanical interfaces. Your rescue mission was monitored from the moment you entered our territory. Daniel heard the familiar sounds of breaching charges and tactical movement. His people had found him, just as he'd known they would. Sarah's voice carried through the fortress walls, coordinating her assault team with the efficiency that had made her the best extraction specialist in the Corps. You could run, he told Zuravel, watching her manipulate the fortress defenses with casual expertise. Disappear into the deep levels. Let them take me home, and condemn both our species to extinction. Zuravel's compound eyes reflected light in patterns too complex for human vision to interpret. No, engineer. Some prices are too high to pay for mere survival. The chamber doors exploded inward in a shower of crystalline fragments. Sarah entered in full combat gear, her pulse rifle tracking across potential threats with machine precision. Behind her, Daniel could see the rest of his squad, battered but alive, their weapons covering every angle of approach. Daniel. Sarah's relief was audible even through her helmet's comm system. We're getting you out of here. But her weapon remained trained on Zuravel, who stood motionless beside the biomechanical controls. The Hive Queen made no aggressive moves, her secondary arms spread in a gesture of peaceful intent. Wait. Daniel's voice carried enough authority to halt his team's advance. There's something you need to hear. He gestured toward the genetic data still displayed across the chamber walls, the evidence of coordinated biological warfare that threatened both species with extinction. Sarah's helmet sensors began analyzing the information, her tactical computer processing the implications with mechanical efficiency. Daniel watched her posture change as the data penetrated her military conditioning, the rigid angles of her combat stance softening into uncertainty. This can't be accurate. Her voice carried the hollow tone of someone confronting an unacceptable truth. Our own people wouldn't develop weapons of mass sterilization. Zuravel's harmonic voice made Sarah's weapon waver. Wouldn't engineer genetic cascades designed to eliminate an entire species. Your history suggests otherwise, soldier. More evidence flowed across the chamber walls. Financial records, military contracts, research facilities hidden within legitimate scientific installations. The conspiracy reached deep into human command structure, coordinated by officials who believed extinction preferable to genetic integration. We have to get this information to command, Sarah said, her tactical training overriding emotional responses. Real command, not the compromised elements shown in these files. And we will, Daniel replied. But first, there's something else. He explained Zuravel's proposal, watching his team's reactions range from disbelief to horror to reluctant understanding. The genetic compatibility. The potential for hybrid offspring immune to bioweapons. The possibility of salvation through transformation. Marriage to an alien. Sarah's voice carried notes of incredulity. Daniel, you can't seriously be considering. I'm considering survival, he interrupted, for all of us. Both species. The chamber's bioluminescent patterns shifted suddenly, warning colors, flooding across surfaces in urgent cascades. Zuravel's compound eyes turned toward the fortress perimeter, her secondary arms working frantically across the control interfaces. Incoming spacecraft, she announced, her harmonic voice tight with stress. Military configuration. They carry bioweapon delivery systems. Sarah's tactical display confirmed the threat. Multiple vessels approaching Thornvale, their energy signatures matching strategic bombardment platforms. Someone had decided that Daniel's rescue mission provided perfect cover for eliminating the Hive fortress entirely, along with his rescue team. "How long until they reach firing position?" Daniel asked, his combat engineering experience calculating trajectories and weapon ranges. 12 minutes, Zuravel replied, her bioluminescence cycling through rapid warning patterns. Insufficient time for evacuation, but sufficient time for biological integration if Daniel chose to accept her offer. The marriage bond would grant him access to Hive defensive systems, their biomechanical technologies responding to hybrid neural patterns in ways that purely human consciousness could never achieve. Sarah grabbed his arm, her grip tight enough to dent his remaining armor plating. "Daniel, don't do this. There has to be another way." "Show me," he replied, gesturing toward the approaching threat on the tactical displays. "Show me any other way that saves both our species." She couldn't answer. The mathematics were too clear, the approaching deadline too absolute. Zuravel moved closer, her forearms reaching out to frame his face with ceremonial precision. The bioorganic bonds securing him to the examination platform dissolved, recognizing his change in status from prisoner to potential consort. "The marriage ritual will alter your genetic structure," she explained, her harmonic voice carrying both warning and promise. "You will remain human in consciousness and core identity, but your biology will adapt to interface with Hive systems. Your children will carry the best characteristics of both species, and the weapons approaching us now will find targets that no longer match their genetic targeting parameters. The ritual will render us immune to the bioweapons threatening both our peoples." Daniel looked at his team, seeing understanding and support warring with duty and conditioning in their expressions. Sarah's hand remained on her weapon, but her finger had moved away from the trigger. 8 minutes to firing position, Zuravel announced. "Do it," Daniel said. The marriage ritual unfolded with alien majesty and human courage intertwining in patterns too complex for either species to fully comprehend. Zuravel's secondary arms traced geometric patterns across his exposed skin, her talons leaving marks that burned with pleasant fire. Biomechanical interfaces throughout the chamber responded to their combined presence, the fortress systems recognizing the emergence of a new form of consciousness. Daniel felt his genetic structure beginning to shift, human DNA integrating with alien biosignatures in ways that created something entirely new. His nervous system expanded to accommodate additional sensory inputs. His muscular structure adapted to interface with Hive biomechanical controls. His reproductive cells transformed to ensure compatibility with his bride's exotic biology. Pain gave way to transcendence as human limitations dissolved into hybrid potential. The bioweapons struck Thornville exactly as projected, their genetic targeting systems seeking human and alien biosignatures that no longer existed in their original forms. The weapons found only empty space where their designated targets should have been. Their sophisticated guidance systems unable to lock onto genetic patterns that had transcended the boundaries of single-species biology. Daniel rose from the ritual platform with senses expanded beyond human comprehension, his consciousness now interfaced with Thornville's biomechanical systems. Through the fortress's sensory network, he could feel the attacking spacecraft orbiting overhead, their crews confused by weapons systems that had apparently malfunctioned. Through biomechanical communication channels that bypassed normal physics, he reached out to those vessels, his hybrid consciousness speaking in harmonics that penetrated their shielded hulls. "This is combat engineer Daniel," he transmitted, his voice now carrying alien undertones that made human communication equipment resonate. "I am speaking to you from within Thornville Fortress, where I have just completed marriage to Hive Queen Zuravel." The response from the attack fleet carried tones of disbelief and outrage, human voices demanding explanation for his apparent defection to enemy forces. "I am transmitting evidence of the bioweapon conspiracy that threatens both our species," Daniel continued, his hybrid consciousness interfacing directly with their communication systems. "Examine the data, verify its authenticity, then ask yourselves whether genocide serves any purpose beyond the preservation of ideological purity." Sarah stepped forward, her helmet's communication array boosting his signal across military frequencies. "This is Extraction Team Leader Sarah," she announced, confirming Engineer Daniel's identity and the authenticity of transmitted intelligence. "Be advised that human and alien populations face coordinated extinction from bioweapons deployed by rogue military elements. Immediate investigation required." The evidence flowed through communication channels like digital wildfire, genetic data, and financial records, combining to reveal the full scope of the conspiracy. Within minutes, the attacking fleet's commanders were demanding explanations from their own superiors. The chain of command fracturing as loyalties divided between duty and truth. Zerevel moved to stand beside her new husband, her compound eyes reflecting satisfaction as the bioweapon threat dissolved into political confusion. The marriage had achieved its primary objective, survival for both species through genetic adaptation that rendered existing weapons obsolete. But their union represented more than mere biological expedience. As Daniel's expanded consciousness merged with Hive collective intelligence, he experienced emotions and sensations that had no human equivalent. Love took on new dimensions when shared between minds that operated on different frequencies of reality. "Your people will need time to accept what we have become," Zerevel observed, her harmonic voice now comprehensible to Daniel without translation assistance. "Our offspring will face challenges from those who fear change. Then we'll give them reasons to embrace change instead of fearing it," Daniel replied, his hybrid consciousness already formulating plans for technological integration that could benefit both species. "We'll show them what becomes possible when cooperation replaces conquest." The attacking fleet withdrew in confusion, their crews struggling to reconcile military orders with evidence of conspiracy. Some vessels departed for human command centers, carrying Daniel's intelligence data to authorities who might act on the revelations. Others remained in orbit, their commanders uncertain whether to classify the marriage as defection or diplomatic breakthrough. Sarah and her extraction team prepared for their own departure, their mission parameters fundamentally altered by circumstances beyond any tactical planning. They would return to Ashdale Base, carrying evidence of bioweapon conspiracies and genetic warfare that reached into the highest levels of military command. But they would also carry news of humanity's first hybrid marriage, and the promise of children who might bridge the gap between species that had known only warfare. Daniel watched their shuttle disappear into hyperspace, his enhanced senses tracking their passage through dimensional barriers that human technology barely comprehended. Beside him, Zerevel's bioluminescent patterns shifted to colors that spoke of hope and anticipation. Their children would inherit both the analytical precision of human engineering and the collective wisdom of Hive consciousness. They would possess immunity to bioweapons designed to destroy either parent species. Most importantly, they would grow up knowing that love could transcend the boundaries of biology, that cooperation created possibilities that conflict could never achieve. The first hybrid offspring would be born within a year, their genetic structure representing the next stage of evolution for both civilizations. They would face challenges that no purely human or purely alien children could overcome, but they would also possess capabilities that neither species could achieve alone. In the months that followed, Daniel's engineering expertise combined with Hive biomechanical technology to create innovations that revolutionized both civilizations. Hybrid consciousness interfaced with human-computer systems to achieve processing speeds that approached the theoretical limits of physics. Biomechanical construction techniques enabled the creation of structures that grew and adapted to their inhabitants' needs. The bioweapon conspiracy collapsed under investigation, its architects exposed as ideological extremists who had chosen genocide over integration. New treaties established frameworks for cooperation between species, with hybrid offspring serving as living proof that genetic diversity strengthened rather than weakened civilization. But perhaps most importantly, Daniel and Zerubbabel's marriage demonstrated that love could flourish between minds that operated on entirely different frequencies of reality. Their partnership became a model for others who chose transformation over conflict, cooperation over conquest. Their children would inherit a galaxy where the boundaries between species had become permeable, where genetic adaptation enabled survival in environments that would have destroyed their grandparents. They would grow up knowing that their existence represented not compromise or contamination, but the natural evolution of consciousness toward greater complexity and capability. Standing in Thornville's highest tower, watching binary stars rise over landscapes that had been transformed from battlefields into gardens, Daniel reflected on the path that had led from capture to marriage to transformation. The combat engineer who had infiltrated this fortress to rescue his squadmates had become something unprecedented. The first human to transcend the limitations of single-species biology. Zerubbabel joined him at the observation platform, her 4 arms moving in gentle synchronization as she analyzed atmospheric conditions with senses that extended far beyond human capability. Together, they watched their hybrid children playing in courtyards where human technology and alien biomechanics had merged into something beautiful and entirely new. The future stretched before them like an uncharted galaxy, filled with possibilities that neither species could have imagined while trapped in the narrow boundaries of their original biology. Their love had become a bridge between worlds, their children a promise that evolution itself could be guided by choice rather than chance. Some bonds were forged in battle. Others grew from the decision to choose creation over destruction, hope over fear, transformation over the comfortable limitations of genetic purity. Daniel and Zerubbabel had chosen all of it: love, change, and the magnificent uncertainty of a future written in languages that neither species had yet learned to speak. Their marriage had saved 2 civilizations. Their children would create a third.